The Silicon Valley skyline was a jagged lie, built on stolen dreams and caffeine. For Elias Thorne, it was a prison. He didn't work in a sprawling tech campus with free food and nap pods. He worked in a cramped, windowless apartment, fueled by energy drinks and the manic energy of creation. His partner, Julian Vane, was the face of their company, Ether Dynamics. Julian was charming, wore expensive suits, and knew how to pitch to investors. Elias was the brain, the ghost in the machine, the one who wrote the actual code. Their creation was a masterpiece, Project Icarus. It was a decentralized cloud security system designed to make data theft impossible. It was Elias's life's work, a symmetrical beauty in digital form. "This is it, Elias," Julian said, his eyes gleaming with a greedy light as he looked at the final line of code on Elias's screen. "We're going to change the world and get rich." "It's not about the money, Julian," Elias said softly. "It's about true security, true privacy." Julian laughed, a hollow sound. "Always the romantic, Elias. That's why I handle the business." That business, as Elias would soon discover, didn't include him. The day before Project Icarus was set to launch, the apartment door was kicked open. Not by enthusiastic investors, but by federal agents. Julian Vane stood behind them, his face a mask of false concern. "I tried to stop him," Julian told the agents, his voice dripping with synthesized sorrow. "I had no idea he was selling our encryption keys to a foreign cartel on the dark web. It breaks my heart." Elias was dragged out in handcuffs, confused and screaming, labeled a cyber-terrorist. Julian had wiped all traces of Elias from Ether Dynamics. He presented Project Icarus to the world as his own, receiving the standing ovations that belonged to Elias. Elias was sentenced to 10 years in a maximum security prison, his name added to every global cyber blacklist. In the digital age, being blacklisted was worse than death. It was erasure. Prison wasn't just a physical cage for Elias. It was a digital one. He was forbidden from touching any device more advanced than a calculator. He was a blacklisted entity, a threat to national security. While Julian Vane was gracing the covers of business magazines, hailed as the savior of data, Elias was cleaning prison toilets, labeled a digital pariah. But Julian made one critical mistake. He forgot that a true coder doesn't need a keyboard to write code. Elias spent the next 7 years building a new language in his head. He used the rhythm of the prison guard's footsteps as a clock cycle. He used the patterns in the concrete cracks on his cell wall to map out logic gates. He spent every waking moment constructing a masterpiece of invisible warfare, a digital pathogen designed to do one thing: consume Project Icarus. He knew Project Icarus better than Julian did. He knew every symmetrical beauty and every hidden flaw. Because Elias had written it, and because he had written it, he knew about the flaw he had left incomplete. Not a back door, but a symmetrical logic gate that was designed to collapse if it was ever used with greedy, unauthorized intent. Julian's ego had blinded him. He hadn't just stolen the code, he had expanded Project Icarus into every facet of digital life. Governments used it for intelligence, banks used it for transactions, and average citizens used it for their digital footprints. The more powerful Julian became, the more fragile his digital foundation was, and Elias knew exactly where to strike. After 7 years of silent mental construction, Elias was released on parole. He was rehabilitated, but still blacklisted. No bank account, no phone, no identity. He was a non-person. Julian Vane thought he had successfully deleted Elias. He had no idea he had just activated his own expiration date. Julian Vane was hosting the annual Silicon Valley Gala. He was on stage, receiving yet another award for Data Security Pioneer. Behind him, a massive LED screen displayed a graphical representation of Project Icarus, a network of golden lines covering the globe. "Security," Julian declared, his voice smooth and authoritative, "is not a right, it is a commodity, and I am proud to be its leading provider. My blacklisted enemies tried to destroy me, but truth always wins." The crowd cheered, but their phones simultaneously buzzed. A new notification appeared on every screen. "Your data security is a lie. Ask Julian Vane about his ghost." Julian's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. "A pathetic, blacklisted attempt at distraction. We will delete this virus in seconds." Suddenly, the golden lines of Project Icarus on the massive LED screen behind him began to turn a deep, digital crimson. They started to collapse, not into chaos, but into perfect mathematical symbols. A voice, calm and digitized, filled the gold-leafed hall. It was a voice Julian hadn't heard in 7 years, but it haunted his dreams. "The flaw wasn't in the code, Julian. It was in the thief. You can steal a vision, but you can't steal the truth. Icarus is not falling. He is waking up." Elias stood in the back of the hall, wearing a simple hoodie. He was blacklisted, but he was using the very decentralized nature of Project Icarus to run his code. Julian's empire wasn't being attacked from the outside. It was consuming itself from the inside. Every bank account linked to Project Icarus was frozen. Every classified document secured by it was uploaded to a public server. Every company that had blacklisted Elias found their internal systems locked with the words "Blacklist, revoked, property of Elias Thorne." "Elias, you're behind this. I'll sue you. I'll have you locked up forever," Julian roared, his composure shattering as security scrambled. "You can't sue a ghost, Julian, and you can't lock up what's already everywhere," Elias replied, his voice echoing from the speakers. "By the time the police arrive, Julian, your bank accounts will be empty. Your patents will be public, and your reputation will be a historical footnote about a thief. This isn't just an audit. This is deletion." A group of federal agents entered the ballroom. They weren't there for Elias. They were there for Julian. "Mr. Vane," the lead agent said, his face grim, "we have received the true encryption keys and the documentation for Project Icarus. It seems your patent application was a criminal forgery, and we have the evidence you planted on Elias Thorne. You are under arrest for corporate espionage, wire fraud, and fabricating national security threats." The elite crowd moved away from Julian as if he had a digital plague. His entourage vanished. Elias walked through the ballroom, past the stunned billionaires and CEOs. He stopped directly in front of Julian as the agents cuffed him. "You defined security as a commodity, Julian." Elias smiled, a cold, beautiful flash of teeth. "It turns out true security is just the inability to be corrupted. You failed." He reached out and took the Data Security Pioneer Award from Julian's handcuffed hands. He dropped it on the floor, mirroring Julian's own discard of him. "You called me a ghost," Elias said, leaning in close. "I prefer the architect. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a world to rebuild and a blacklist to clean." As Julian Vane was dragged out of his own gala, Elias looked out at the city he now partially controlled. The debt was paid. The code was home. And the best part? He was just getting started. He hadn't just deleted Julian Vane's reality. He had rewritten his own. The ghost had a body, and the body had an empire. The fall of Julian Vane was only the beginning. Elias didn't take Julian's title or Julian's office. He remained invisible, a digital phantom who now owned the infrastructure that had blacklisted him. He used Julian's resources to build a new entity, the Restoration Group. Their mission wasn't just to build code, but to provide justice for those whom Julian had discarded, the real architects of Silicon Valley. Elias reached out to other ghosts, brilliant people Julian had used and discarded over the years. Together, they formed a shadow network of brilliance, fueled by a collective thirst for truth. The world was changing. The golden age of stolen ideas was over. Governments and banks were now audited, not by paid consulting firms, but by an anonymous entity known only as the architect. Corruption was identified and neutralized before it could take root. Julian Vane, once the king of the valley, was now scrubbing prison toilets, labeled a digital pariah, his own name added to the very global blacklist he had helped create. Elias's mental code had proven superior to Julian's ambition. Elias stood on the balcony of his new sprawling tech campus, a place that was windowless and filled with energy drinks, but this time it was built on true collaboration. He looked out at the Silicon Valley skyline, no longer a lie, but a dynamic, honest network of innovation. The ghost was the machine. The blacklist was gone. The truth had won. And Elias Vanguard, now the invisible CEO, was just getting started on his long audit of reality.